Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Joy of Pixels podcast for Friday, July 10th, 2020. How is everyone doing today? I am joined, as always, by Akko Sambo, the Akko Sambo. How are you, Akko?
I'm doing all right. Had an exhausting work week behind me, but now the weekend is nigh, and the joy of pixels are filling me with even more joy. Best pixels.
We have the best pixels here. It's the best in all of the internets.
I can confirm.
Welcome to everyone in chat. I hope everyone is doing well today. We got an exciting show today. I also have a very exciting announcement that I teased everyone about last week. We are officially a podcast now. So we have we set up a podcast, an RSS feed, and it is now available on all of your podcasting services: iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast. It should be everywhere. And if somebody, there you go, Vermont, perfect. I set up a link there. So what would really help us is if you can click on that link and whatever service you use, that's awesome. Click on your favorite podcasting service and rate us 5 out of 5, because we are 5 out of 5. I mean, look at us. We are 5 out of 5. And no, it really would help us a lot. Also, just sharing it, telling your friends about it. Tell your moms, your dads, your brothers, your sisters, the random people on the street, grandparents, everyone. I think it would be really cool if we could actually get a following, start to grow a following outside of our communities here. I think that could be really cool. So yeah, super excited about that. Thank you just to everyone who has helped kind of grow this and help it become a little thing that it is. I hope it becomes a bigger thing than it is. Akko, thank you too. Thank you for doing this with me.
I mean, you are not able to do this because of me, just despite of me. So
it's all you, Akko. Wouldn't be able to do any of this without you. But no, seriously, thank you to Akko, and thank you to everyone. Thank you to all of my previous guests that have been on. Thank you to everybody that has played a little part in this. I'm excited about doing this. Let's go ahead and get into the show. We've got a nice little cozy show today, I feel like. I think so. We got a few games that we are going to talk about. Akko, what have you been playing?
I haven't playing anything because I've been playing being an adult.
You've been playing real life. Yeah.
Yes.
Totally understand.
The graphics are great, but everything else is kind of shitty. It's very tedious, exhausting. The quests are repetitive. It's just a constant circle of grinding. It's terrible.
The NPCs are the worst.
Hate them. But yeah, not much new that I played. But soon more to come.
What you going to get back to Assassin's Creed?
Yes, we'll continue the DLC there, and there's also then the second DLC, Mass Effect Andromeda, is still on the list as well. And then I thought about a couple of things that I want to tackle after that. And this is a world exclusive announcement that I am.
Everybody, get ready! Yeah. 2 announcements in one podcast.
I promise you won't be disappointed. That I think I want to get into the Mafia series after that, since the new one.
I thought you were going to say, I think I want to get into the Mafia.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. However, also the games.
Okay.
Yeah,
good series.
I have the third one, and I know that a lot of people like the series. But the third one is a little bit mixed. But I saw a couple of clips of the third one, and I was really intrigued by it. And the negative points that they brought up weren't really big deal for me. So I'm kind of curious about that. And then there are a couple of more things where I first have to check if my good old trusty laptop will be able to run that. But will
I think they're on
maybe.
console though, aren't they?
Yeah, the Mafia one, but I meant another game that I
Oh,
considered
gotcha.
playing. Reality might know what it is because he may or may not have had a hand in me getting the game. So
Ooh.
shout outs to Reality there. But we'll first have to check how and if I get it running. But if that's the case, I will have a couple of games soon coming up as well.
Very cool. Yeah, the Mafia series is really good. I played a little bit of the first one like way back in the day, and I'm super excited about the remake. They just delayed it. I think from August to September, a month. You know, what else is new? Another day, another delay. But the second one I played a lot of. That one came out like in 2008 or something like that. I think for a lot of people that was their favorite one. But the remake for one looks incredible. And then I also played a little bit of 3 when it came out, and I understand why people were upset about it or like not crazy about it because it changed a lot of things. It made it more like GTA and less like Mafia, because Mafia had some kind of unique things about it that were almost more like a gangster simulator instead of like kind of a silly fun open world like GTA. And I think they both have their merits. But I mean, there were things like you literally will get pulled over by the police if you go too fast when you're driving, and things like that. So it's but I mean, that sounds terrible because it sounds like you would just, you know, always be getting pulled over and that kind of stuff. But it's more about the immersion to me. Like, you really just kind of get into the whole immersive world of being in the Mafia, and it's pretty cool. But yeah, that'll be fun to play.
I wanna play Mafia 3D before the remake to then get a sense of whether or not I'm into the whole thing, and then I am interested in checking out the remastered or remake or whatever it's called.
Well, that's the good thing is they I think there's a couple of things that like tie into the games, but for the most part, like they're separate stories. So it's perfectly fine to start with 3 or 2 or anything like that. Like, you don't have to start with 1.
Yeah, that's cool.
Sid in chat asks, have I looked at the new SOA? I don't know what SOA is. SOA. Sons of Anarchy? That's the first thing that came to mind. But yeah.
Stealthy Otter Army.
Oh, Sword Art Online.
I was so close.
No, I haven't. I've never played a Sword Art Online game. I've always kind of been tempted to because they look somewhat interesting, but never gotten into them.
Yeah,
well, I played a few games this week. I played some weird games. Have you ever heard of Pathologic 2?
Yes, I heard of it, but I can't really don't remember exactly what it is, but the name rings a bell.
It's a weird game. I almost did even. I almost thought I wouldn't even talk about this today because I don't even know how to describe this game, and I only played like a little tiny bit. I think it's even too weird for me. Like, I'm usually into some pretty weird games, but I don't even know how to really describe it. But it's on Game Pass, so that's why I just downloaded it. And I was like, I'll check this out. It looks interesting. Probably not the best time to play this type of game either, because it literally takes place like in the middle of a plague that's going on in a city, and like you're playing as a doctor or something like that, trying to save people's lives. But when you start this game, it literally pops up with a text saying like, hey, you're not going to understand what's going on, but all will make sense. Just keep playing.
Okay.
And I was like, okay. And I mean, the game, like, it really does. It starts like in the middle. It starts you in the back of this theater, this weird theater. And like all the lights are off, and like I can't even see anything. And then like you see a little bit of light, and you turn around, and it's like the front of the theater, and there's like this guy giving some performance art or something. And then you go up to him and talk to him, and he like tells you to go and talk to this weird bird-looking creature. And then you kind of it seems like it's semi-open world, but I had no idea what I was doing. Like it flips around a lot in between like time skips and things like that. And all this again was like in 30 minutes. So I don't know if I'm going to go back to it. It looks like it could be interesting, but like I didn't really get into any kind of gameplay or anything. I was just kind of going around, walking around, talking to people. Very interesting imagery and very just interesting art design. I think it was originally a Kickstarter. I could be wrong, but I think it was originally a Kickstarter. And so there seems to be like a very passionate fan base for this game. So I kind of want to find out more, but I also just don't know if I want to put the time into it and see what it is. But anyway, I thought I would just throw that out. I finished Resident Evil Code Veronica yesterday, and man, that game is bonkers. Like in the best possible way. This is I guess the oldest Resident Evil game that I've played, even though it came out after Resident Evil 1 and 2. But I played technically the remake of 1, which I think came out in like 2002 or something like that. And then Resident Evil 2 and 3, I played the remakes of those. So this is like the very much old school Resident Evil. And I really, really struggled at first with the controls because it's tank controls, and I was not very good with those. But I actually picked it up fairly quickly and ended up really, really liking this game for the most part. The bosses, I really struggled and didn't really like some of the bosses. But the bosses in Resident Evil games have never really been the strong point. The map is also pretty confusing, just the layout and kind of the level design. But the overall like story and world and characters and gameplay for the most part was really, really fun. And I'm really, really glad that I played it. It's super janky. I think I would only recommend this game like if you're really, really into Resident Evil, and if you're okay with going back to like a really old, janky art style.
How long did it take you now to beat?
How long did it take me to beat? So my final time, it said it was only like 15 hours, but it was way longer than that because it was only counting like in-game hours and was not counting reloads. And I think I died like 49 times or something. And sometimes I would die and literally lose like 2 hours of progress. So, but the thing with Resident Evil is it's like when you die and you lose 2 hours of progress, it's not really 2 hours of progress because like I can get back through once I know what to do in like 10 to 20 minutes. It's just the way those games go. So it feels devastating, like when you lose all that progress, but then you're like, oh, really all I did was go and grab this key and grab this weapon and then go through this door and get killed by this thing. It just took me 2 hours to figure out how to do that the first time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would probably say, man, I don't even know, like 35 to 40 hours is probably what I spent on it.
Playing it for a while,
yeah. Yeah, it took me a while to get through. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed it and it was really fun. I've just been having such a good time going through those games. They're definitely not for everybody, but man, I love them. Still going through Majora's Mask. I'm getting closer to that one, or getting closer to the end of that one. I think I'm on the last temple or dungeon, whatever they call them. But I think there might be one after this one, like a final dungeon or something like that. So getting pretty close to that. Still having a good time with that. Darkest Dungeon is fantastic. I really want to play that game and get back into that. It's just so long. And then I also have been playing a little bit of Anno.
That's a random one.
Yeah, I'm like that. I'm very random sometimes. I really like the Anno games, though. Have you ever played any of those?
I tried to get into the Anno games because I like the type of game, the kind of economy simulator and real time strategy mix. I played a similar one, I think. Not quite sure what the English title is. Patrician, I think. Um,
Oh yeah,
which
I
which is
tried
kind of
playing that when
similar-ish.
it was too complicated.
I like that one, and I didn't really get into Anno. So
Okay.
but I think it was the first and the. I think I only tried the first Anno, and I didn't really like it because I think I think my issue was that it was not like economy management enough to be fun in that aspect, and not real time strategy enough for me to be fun in that aspect. So it was kind of in the middle
Yeah.
there, and neither of them really kind of convinced me. So but I didn't try the new one. I always wanted to go back and try one of the newer titles to just see if I might like them now, because I do like these types of games, but never got around to it.
So I got into Anno during the 2070 Anno 2070, and I put probably 600 hours into that game. I loved that game so much. I'm very ashamed of this, but so it's an Ubisoft game, and Ubisoft, I love you, but you drive me crazy sometimes because there's no way to just like reset your progress in the game. Um, and like I played the game, but I wanted to just like start completely fresh. And the way those games work is like you have you have progress that you build up, and you have unlocks and things like that you build up. And there's like a huge progression in that game that you can unlock things. And to me, one of the most enjoyable things in a game like that is actually unlocking the things and like doing the achievements and the accomplishments and things like that. And there's just no way to like reset your progress because your save file is like all stored on a server and everything like that.
Oh, that's
So
weird.
I literally bought another version of Anno 2070, and I had to set up like an alternate account on Ubisoft's platform on Uplay, because you can't like have two of the same versions of the game in Uplay. So I have like a whole nother Uplay just for another version of Anno 2070. um, and
the only I did something similar with The Witcher 3 actually, because I um landed my physical copy to a friend, and then I wanted to play The Witcher 3, so I bought it digital as well.
yeah,
With
I
all the
think I have.
DLCs.
I think everyone has like 3 copies of The Witcher 3 by now.
Yeah.
I think I have at least 2, because I have one on Steam and then I have one on GOG as well.
I think I might actually have one on GOG as well by now.
Everyone probably does, because I think they give that game out pretty much nowadays.
Yeah. I also
yeah.
have like 5 times The Witcher 1 from GOG.
Oh yeah, that's the one that they
chance to get it
definitely
5
give out.
times.
They give that game like out every other week or something like that. They're
Yeah.
giving out Witcher 1 and 2. So yeah, anyway, if you're gonna play an Anno game, I would probably recommend the newest one, which is 1800.
Okay.
I think it's the most polished. So I've played a lot of that one, but I wanted to go back and play 2205, because that one came out and it's not great. It has some things that I like about it. So I personally like the futuristic settings. It's one of the reasons that really drew me to 2070. Fun fact, all of these games, the numbers always add up to 9. I don't know if people know that. So you have 1800, 8 plus 1 is 9, 2070, 2 plus 7, 2205, etc. It's kind of a weird thing. German devs, by the way, too.
Yeah, I was about to say that I for some reason I associate the Anno series with Germany, but I wasn't sure if I'm correct on that.
Yeah. So yeah, anyway, 1800 came out, and I think it's, like I said, probably the best that game has ever been, but I'm just not super crazy about the time frame of that game, since it is 1800. It's still a great game, but I just like the more futuristic setting. So a few years ago when 2205 came out, that was the sequel to 2070, and I was so excited for that game because, like I said, I put 600 hours into 2070, and I went from being super excited to being so disappointed with that game because they really, really dumbed it down. One of the coolest things was just like setting up your settlements, and you had to like set up farms and things like that. And then each farm you had to set up like a potato field, or a potato farm would have like 5 potato fields, and then you would have to place the fields on the map. But then you would have like a corn farm, and then you would have like 8 corn fields that you could put in there. And so like you would have to really strategically place all of your fields, and you have like a small land mass that you're working on, so you really have to place it very strategically so that you can fit everything in there. And I really loved that aspect. And that's just one of the small things that they really dumbed this down in 2205. So like when you place a field in 2205, like you don't place, or when you place a farm or a factory or something like that, you don't place any additional things. You just place the building, and then it just kind of like auto populates in the areas. And that just really kind of bums me out. You also don't really have like as much strategy layer in terms of trading, like with your settlements and setting up trade routes and things like that. But with all of that being said, I hadn't really ever gone back to this game since they released all the DLC and everything like that, so I figured I would. It's still very simplistic, a little too simplistic from what I'm wanting, but I am enjoying it for the most part. Just as kind of a game just to kind of relax late at night when, I don't really have to think too much about anything. But I also still really want to get back to 1800 because, like I said, 1800 is just fantastic. They listened to the community. They listened that people were angry that they dumbed it down, and they put more complex things back in it and made it much more enjoyable to play, in my opinion.
I mean, that is obviously always the struggle with these types of games, where on one hand you want to make it accessible to a lot of people, so a lot of people buy it and enjoy it, but at the same time you don't want to make it too easy and too simplistic, so that actually that the people who are actually into the genre also get something out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that reminds me, I did play a game this week, and that is Out of the Park Baseball.
Oh,
So.
Nice.
So
that's the management game, right?
Yeah, the baseball management game.
Yeah, that's the one that was coming to Game Pass.
Yeah.
So everybody can try that now.
Again, try it out for those who like a good simulation, like a good sports management. It's really good. It's really, really good, and has a lot of features to it that most other simulation types game don't have. And also, I think the same devs, and they are also from Germany, funnily enough.
Nice.
They have
Germans making a baseball game. That's interesting.
Yeah, I was surprised at that as well. But yeah, and for quite some time, actually. I think they started doing the first version was in 2000 or so. But
wow.
They also have a similar type game for the NHL. So if you're interested in these types of games and are more interested in hockey,
yeah,
maybe give that a try. I can't say if it's as good or better or similar, that I don't know, but it's the same
depth. There's so many of these games, right? Like, I mean, there's Football Manager.
Really
there's
not that good. That is the issue, or
okay.
have varying degrees of quality. At least from what I play. So I have a long history of playing the Football Manager games, but not the ones that are. I think Konami has the current version. I played the ones that EA made because they were the ones that you really were popular in Germany back then. And I played a bunch of those, and some of them were better than others. But for the most part, I enjoyed them. I played the Cyclist Management, Tour de France.
Look, I have come close to buying that game. Okay,
they are fun. I can honestly tell
there's something about
fun.
those that looks fun.
Yeah. It's I don't know. I don't know what these types of games. I would never yell at someone for saying that they are boring, because they are boring, but in a way that's kind of the point of them. That it's like it's not mindless fun, but it's like fun that you can do on the side, and you still can like tinker and like really get into the details. And I think that is also why I like the out of the park baseball ones so much, because the game of baseball is so much about that anyway, about the statistics and about like the nuances, and the game itself is objectively pretty boring. Even I, as a baseball fan, have to say that it's a pretty boring game, but it's really about the details and about statistics. And if you like numbers, like baseball is the sport for that, and I think that translates very well into that, and they lean into it very well, which then makes that game really hit a spot there.
Speaking of boring games, Fallout 76 is out on Game Pass now. So I downloaded that. I want to try it again. I now that it has like the full NPCs and actual quests and things in it, I think you can play that game a little bit more like a traditional Fallout game. So I do want to try that out at some point.
I'm just hesitant about it in the sense that I'm sure it's better now. I think just for me, it will, like, at best, it's still a watered down Fallout. And it's like, rather wait for the next Fallout.
But it's free now. I mean, not free, but if you have Game Pass, then, you know, I figured I might as well try it out. Yeah. Also, just a couple other games I'll mention that are free now on Epic. Killing Floor 2, that's a really good game. Lifeless Planet, I want to check that one out. I think you play as like a little explorer on Mars or something like that. And then The Escapist 2, which I've heard is really good. And then it looks like Torchlight 2 is going to be coming up free next.
Nice.
As far as game releases, we've actually got quite a few game releases coming out. I'm going to just run through these really quick and then just kind of mention a couple. So today, July 10th, Bloodstained Curse of the Moon 2 comes out for PC, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch. That is, of course, the sequel to Curse of the Moon 1. It is by, I can't ever remember his name, but it's by the guy that made Castlevania Symphony of the Night. So people really liked the first one, and they kind of shadow dropped that one out of nowhere. Also, Deadly Premonition 2 comes out for Nintendo Switch, which is such a weird thing, but that game in general is just weird. I know Luckless is playing that. And I know a lot of people are really excited about this game. Like, it's a very, very much has a cult following.
Yeah, and I already saw lots of reports that it runs on like 10.
Yeah,
if you're lucky.
But people don't care. People don't care. Like they're all in for it.
Yeah. I think it will be another case. Like, if you like the first one, you probably enjoy this one as well, because you won't care about these things and you will enjoy all the weirdness. But it's probably also a game that if you're not familiar with the first one or didn't like the first one, probably should stay away from this one as well.
Yeah. It's so bizarre to me that it's a Nintendo Switch exclusive. F1 2020 comes out today. Sisters Royale. Let's see. Sword Art Online. Oh boy, I don't know how in the world to say that. Alization Licoris. Probably nailed that pronunciation. And then July 14th, we have Death Stranding coming out for PC. That's a big one. We also have Neon Abyss coming out July 14th for PC, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch. Rocket Arena. That one was just announced in someone's press conference. I can't remember who it was. Ooblets. I can't remember what Ooblets is about, but I know I remember hearing it and people were excited for that. That's a PC, Xbox One title that's coming out July 15th. Hunting Simulator 2. Those games are actually pretty fun sometimes, if you like those kind of games.
I never played them, but I know that a lot of people enjoy them.
There's Hunter Call of the Wild, I think it is, that is actually a really fun game. Hunting Simulator 2 comes out on PC for July 16th. And then we've got two massive ones coming out next Friday. Ghost of Tsushima for PS4 on July 17th, and Paper Mario: The Origami King for Nintendo Switch comes out July 17th. Nintendo actually just had it wasn't a direct, they call it a Treehouse Live, I think it was. And they just showed off some more gameplay of Paper Mario. That game looks pretty good. I kind of want to check it out. I've never played a Paper Mario game, but I know that they are very popular and people really like those.
Yeah, never played the first one either, but now that a lot of people love them, and yeah, we'll see. I mean, and then are you planning on playing Ghost of Tsushima?
I am. I've kind of gone back and forth, but I've had some people mention that they really wanted me to check it out. So I think I'm going to try and cover it on the channel, and I hope it's good. My biggest fear is that the combat is going to be too simplistic, and they really haven't shown, at least from what I've seen, they really haven't shown any. I mean, they've shown the combat, but they haven't really said like what you're doing. It looks like it could be a little bit more like Assassin's Creed, where you're just kind of like blocking and waiting to parry, like the older Assassin's Creed games. So that's my biggest worry. But the world and environments and story just look fascinating and look beautiful.
Yeah, I'm a little on the fence on that. I may check it out a little later, but I'm mildly intrigued, but kind of waiting what the first impressions are.
Reviews are dropping on the 14th, so we'll have a few days before to. What did you say?
I don't care about those.
Well, I mean, normally I don't either, but I am curious to find out about the combat. Like that's the only thing that's kind of holding me back. So if the combat is good in that game, I think it's going to be amazing. So all right, we're moving along. This is going to be a short podcast. Let's jump into a little bit about the news. Got a couple of stories to talk about. So first of all, I'll mention this. I think it's Sunday. Ubisoft is having their press conference. I think they're calling it Ubisoft Forward, and they're going to be showing off Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Lots of rumors, lots of leaks. Far Cry 6 might be showing up.
You know what they should call these?
What?
You be surprised.
You be surprised. That would be very appropriate.
Yeah. Well, you be disappointed if they're not confident in their product.
Yeah. Ubisoft has a lot of titles that they're sitting on. They have Watch Dogs Legion. They have, so a lot of these games were also supposed to come out already. Watch Dogs Legion was originally scheduled for coming out earlier this year. It was delayed later. Gods and Monsters, I don't know if you ever saw that one. That was
heard of it, yeah.
It was by one of the creators of Assassin's Creed, but it looks like a very different game. It looks much more like a Zelda type game. Much more of like a Breath of the Wild art style. That also was originally scheduled for early this year and delayed. Ubisoft, I think it was last year, like they pushed all of their titles back after Breakpoint came out to kind of sit back and look at, figure out what's going on, which I think was a good thing. And then, of course, like I said, there's lots of rumors, lots of leaks that we're going to get a Far Cry 6 announcement. But Ubisoft just has so many things that they could pull out of nowhere. I would kill for a new Splinter Cell game, because it's been a long time since we've had a Splinter Cell game. They also do like some weird partnerships with Nintendo sometimes. They have the... what was the XCOM like game that they made?
Mario plus
Rabbids. They could possibly pull out a sequel to that. They have the Starlink game that they put out that was somewhat successful. So really looking forward to checking out that. That's going to be Sunday. I'm not sure on the time.
So in terms of Far Cry, you played the Far Cry games. What kind of setting would you be interested in? Since like I feel like since Far Cry 3, that was very heralded as a big step and like as a great game, just from the outside perspective. And I guess if you want to interest new fans in the series, I guess you would need to pull me in as well and interest me. But since then, it kind of felt like the next three kind of the same ish in the sense of, oh, here is a crazy dictator or like a crazy person or a
Yeah.
very out there person that is quirky and the quirky villain type that you're now in the same map with.
That's a really good question. I'm going to go out on a branch here and say that they're probably going to have they're probably not going to do something too crazy that's going to pull a whole new audience in. I think that the people that like these games like them for a pretty specific reason, which is like what you said. You're just kind of given a really cool setting, a big open world, and there's kind of like this evil dictator or this crazy religious cult or something like that, and you just kind of get caught up in the drama of that and kind of start a rebellion against that. I don't really know what they could do because they've been pretty diverse. They Far Cry 2 was Africa, which was a really cool setting. Far Cry 3, which most people would probably say was like the best one, was I don't know if it was even like an actual setting. It was like a tropical environment
Kind of thing,
yeah. And then Far Cry 4, which I personally didn't love but a lot of people liked, that was set in like a mountain area, like
kind of thing, Tibet.
yeah, something like Tibet or something like that. And then Far Cry 5, which I really, really liked, and I would honestly be okay if they did something like this again, but I don't think that they are, was set in America, and it was set kind of like in a like Montana type setting, so kind of out in the West. I don't
What if they do
know.
something like Far Cry Primal? That was a thing, right?
Oh, that's right. I forgot about Far Cry Primal. I still haven't ever
So do you
played
think
Primal.
since they did a Primal, do you think they might do like a full like sci-fi one, kind of as a counterpart to like,
Ooh, that's
or
interesting.
like a very futuristic one?
So Far Cry 5 had DLC that was very bizarre. I heard it wasn't very good, but they had a DLC that was actually set on Mars. And so it was very much sci-fi. But then Far Cry 3 also had one that was much more received, Blood Dragon, which was very much more sci-fi and like very cyberpunk. As big as cyberpunk the genre is getting, that could actually be really fun to have, like maybe more of like an urban Far Cry. But I like I said earlier, I just don't know if they would take that big of a risk because Ubisoft seems to kind of play these their series pretty they don't tend to shy away from what they've done in the past. Although, Assassin's Creed has evolved quite a bit. Like it's kind of a whole new game. I don't know.
But I guess there's also, it's like that is like core of the series is that you are in different times and like the historical tie-ins. That's part of the core. Whereas Far Cry, you could do technically whatever you want.
Yeah. Man, a futuristic setting, like a futuristic sci-fi world, cyberpunk world, could be really cool. I don't think that they would do that, but that would be really cool. Maybe Far Cry 7 would do that.
Maybe they call it Far Cryberpunk.
Far Cryberpunk. I feel like Ubisoft kind of love them or hate them, like they make incredible games. They really do. They have some of the most talented artists and designers and programmers probably in the industry. But they get in this this groove of just like sticking with one formula for so long, and I think it usually kind of overstays its welcome.
Yeah,
You know,
like
that's
oftentimes their first title in a franchise isn't great. Then they
yeah,
kind of perfect the formula, and
yeah,
then they stick it until it dies.
yeah. You know, it's like that with all of their titles. You know, Assassin's Creed, I think a lot of people are concerned about Valhalla, that it is just going to be a reskin of Odyssey. And, you know, for some people, that's going to be perfectly fine. But they, you know, I think they have one more Origins Odyssey type game in them with Valhalla, and then they need to do something different.
And in all fairness, the Assassin's Creed series has done a good job of kind of reinventing itself. You had like the original game, and then it already evolved pretty quickly into 2, Brotherhood and Revelations, which was kind of like a trilogy.
Yeah.
Was then 4 or then 3, Assassin's Creed 3 was a little bit of an in between and not so well received, but then they rebooted it with Black Flag, which was then very well received. Then they had kind of the Dark Ages with Unity and Syndicate that didn't really like Unity, mostly because of the initial technical issues, and then I think Syndicate to a degree suffered from that as well, that people were kind of done with Assassin's Creed. Then with Origin, they were able to rejuvenate it again, or with Origin and Odyssey. So I could see them maybe doing then Valhalla, and then either because the backlash is there, or because they decide, okay, now we need to inject some new fresh blood into it again, that they then move into a little bit of a different direction.
Yeah, and you know, going back to Far Cry 5 to me was a great evolution of the series, because going from 3 to 4, I think this is why I didn't really like 4 so much. 4 very much just felt like a reskin of 3 to me, even though it was like a completely different setting. But it was really just like the exact same game. And the weapons and the gameplay was just all basically exactly the same. But 5, again, it was a completely different setting, and like it is still kind of the same game. Like you're still basically doing the same thing, but like they got rid of the towers, you know, having to go up and like climb up a tower, and like it opens up the world, and then you clear out that region. You know, they got rid of that notion, but again, like you still go into enemy camps, and like clear those out and liberate those camps and things like that. But I just think that they refined the formula and evolved it a little bit more than going from 3 to 4, compared to going from 4 to 5.
Wasn't 5 co-op as well? Like that there was
it was co-op, yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember, because
cool.
New Dawn, which was the expansion, which was very good. I actually really liked New Dawn. I played that one a lot in co-op with someone, but I couldn't remember if 5 was, but I'm pretty sure it was.
Okay. Yeah, I think that is a cool addition. I once saw a map comparison of Far Cry 4 and Primal, and it's basically the same map, just rotated.
Oh, I think they used the same map. Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's like... I don't think you would really even notice it unless you were told that, because it is like, you know, literally 10,000 years in the past. Yeah, I need to go back and try Primal, because I remember...
Yeah, I was always interested in it because like the difference in setting interested me, and how that would work in like a very ancient setting. I was interested in that because we don't have many caveman games.
Yeah, there's the is it Ancestors? Is that the name of the game? Have you seen that, where you play as a monkey and like you literally evolve? No, it's a weird looking game. I heard it was like very mixed, but it has some really interesting ideas. Like you literally start out as a primate, and you go through like the entire evolution process for like hundreds of thousands of years. And you play different, you know, parts, and you like start to learn how to use tools, and then start to learn how to
Interesting.
form the words and things like that. Yeah, it's an interesting premise. Um, yeah, I don't know. What else do you think there's anything else that we could see from Ubisoft?
I mean, I doubt they will just announce a completely new IP. So
Oh, you know what? There's the shoot, what is that game? It's a sequel to a game that was really popular like back in the early 2000s. Oh, does anybody in chat remember what I'm talking about? I don't know if anybody knows what I'm talking about. It was like a very ambitious game that they showed off like 2 or 3 years ago. Um, what was it? I'm gonna have to look it up. Let's move on, and I'll try and look it up and see if I can find it out or figure out what it was. Um. So I didn't bring this up, but the main thing I was going to talk about with Ubisoft was the Valhalla gameplay was leaked. Did you see any of this?
no, I haven't even heard of it.
So 30 minutes of gameplay was leaked, and then also I think like yesterday 7 minutes of a boss fight was leaked. So this whole game is out there basically, but
Okay.
it looks a lot like Odyssey. It also looks a lot like The Witcher. Um,
Odyssey had like I noticed that in the beginning, like especially like the interfaces and some of the pop-ups are very Witcher 3 esque.
mhm.
Not a bad thing, but
Yeah,
noticeable.
not at all. I read like some very mixed comments of people saying like, "Oh, this is literally just Odyssey," um, and like I don't know if that's a bad thing because Odyssey is really good. um,
Yeah,
it's just
I'm
it's
more
what we were talking about. It's like they make these games and then kind of
eventually, yeah. Like eventually they need to move on from that, but I also agree with you. Like I think they have one more. Like if they kind of do another one like Odyssey in another setting, that's fine. Then you have like three of these types that are very similar, but in different settings. Okay. I think then you would need to move on, but I don't think for Valhalla necessarily that's a bad thing yet.
I
If
cannot
they improve upon some of the things in Odyssey.
I cannot find this game. It had the trailer had a pig in it. It was like a talking pig. You guys are gonna think I'm crazy.
The Wolf Among Us too.
It wasn't the Wolf Among Us. Beyond Good and Evil. That's it.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, so they
Never played that.
officially announced this game. They officially announced Beyond Good and Evil 2 back in 2017, I think it was. But they were like, "Hey, this game is like just a concept." Like they even showed like concept footage of it, and it's very ambitious. Like you have a spaceship, and like you can travel from one planet like up into the atmosphere into space, and then travel to another planet. And they showed a really cool looking trailer, but we just haven't heard hardly anything from it. They showed it off again in 2018. It was very much in the concept phase, and I don't think that we heard anything last year. So I know a lot of people are really eager to hear something about that, but I still would be surprised if that game is coming out anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean maybe we get like a teaser trailer for sometime in the future thing,
Yeah.
where we then know it's like within the next couple of years, but don't think we get
Um,
anything concrete.
Skull and Bones is another game that they showed off probably like 3 or 4 years ago. That was initially it started out as being just like a multiplayer. They kind of took the formula of Black Flag and just wanted to make like
Oh,
a pirate ship simulator kind of game. But then kind of they were talking about it was evolving and like they were making a whole new campaign for it, and then they just kind of stopped talking about it. So I don't know if that game is still even in development, but it would be nice to hear something about that.
I mean I would be interested in that, like a good single player pirate game.
Yeah,
I'm into it.
we don't have nearly enough of those.
No, I mean the only thing really is Sea of Thieves, which is obviously multiplayer or like
Yeah.
heavily multiplayer, but and Black Flag definitely proved that there is an interest in that. I think Black Flag was played by a lot of people who weren't too interested in the Assassin's Creed series because it quickly got out that it wasn't really Assassin's Creed as we knew it at that point,
Yeah.
but really just a pirate story. And I think a lot of people enjoyed that, obviously. And the sea combat is still amazing. And if they build upon that, give us a good pirate story of that time, I'm into it.
Yeah. I I completely agree. I just worry that it's going to be something like the For Honor campaign. I don't know if you ever played For Honor.
No,
Uh
but I heard.
yeah, the campaign was just awful. Like it was the most basic generic campaign ever. That game is really cool, but they were really hyping up like, oh yeah, this is gonna have a full on campaign and everything, and it was not great. It was not good at all.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, we'll find out more about that on Sunday. And then also on Saturday, Devolver Digital will be giving their direct press conference video, whatever they're calling it. Devolver Digital usually publishes a lot of technically indie games, but they're usually like more like double A games, like Greedfall or something like that. They do have some smaller indie games as well, but they usually show off some really good games. So excited to see that. And then Xbox also announced that they will be hosting their big press conference on July 23rd. Along with that, they are going to be providing, I think they're calling it like a summer of gaming demos or something like that. But they said there's going to be 60 different demos that they are putting out for various titles. And it's going to be over the course of 1 week that you can download and play those. But I wanted to ask you what you think about this, because I feel like Xbox is just all over the place. Microsoft is all over the place, because they originally came out. They had an I think XO is what they call their conference, back in May, and they put out only third-party titles. They showed off third-party titles for the Series X, and it was very underwhelming. Like the titles that they were showing off just looked okay, but there was hardly any gameplay from any of the stuff that they were showing, and they kept hyping up Assassin's Creed Valhalla, that you're getting Assassin's Creed Valhalla gameplay, and it was like no gameplay that they showed. There were a couple, like I said, there were a couple of games that looked cool, but they were just cinematics for the most part, and we didn't really know what they were about. So then at the end, they said, we're not done. We're going to be showing off first-party titles in July. But I think after the PS4 or the PS PlayStation announcement, where they showed off all of their titles, that was much better received, and people seemed to be much more into the games that they were showing off. They were showing off like an actual diverse selection of games, not just like weird, creepy looking games that we had no idea what they were. And they were actually showing gameplay. So what I'm worried about is, unless Microsoft just really surprises us and like just really throws out some crazy titles, like what do they have to really show for first party? Because it's not that much. Like they have Halo.
Yeah. I think that is the big issue generally with Microsoft, that you, and I'm not even sure if you can necessarily blame like the Xbox crew for that, because I think it's just because Microsoft is like, they can't fully focus on the console market, because like there's also PCs and they are in the PC market. So they're is kind of this full commitment missing sometimes, I feel. Not necessarily from the people involved, I mean, but just the full commitment to the console and to like create it as the best thing invented since sliced bread. Whereas I think Sony does a better job of like showing, like they give you reasons to why you should buy the PlayStation, whereas Xbox gives you reasons to buy certain games or reasons to get the Game Pass service, but like there are not really reasons why should I get an Xbox. And I think that is why people are frustrated with it. But that even when the games might be interesting, it's like, yeah, but I can play that on PC. Why should I play? But what about the Xbox? Tell me more about the Xbox. And I think that that is really frustrating. And in the end, yeah, I mean, what can they announce that would really swing the momentum into a different direction? I don't know. It must be some kind of new IP, because there are not really any existing franchises except for Halo, and everyone knows about Halo, and Halo is great, and people are excited for that. But like, they would have to come out with something really big that is new, that people are immediately excited about, and are saying, yes, that is my Xbox launch title. Because in all fairness, Sony hasn't really given us a good launch setup either. They
Yeah.
gave us some good games to look forward to, but in terms of launch, we don't know. Like, it's Miles Morales, and we don't even know like how big that game is, and
Yeah.
if it's really just a DLC plus or whatever. So if Xbox could come out with a game, maybe a new IP, maybe something that is on launch, a big name that gets people excited with gameplay trailer, like a long, like a big portion of that show, let's say like 50 minutes only on that game, because that is their big thing, and people get excited about it, and they say that will be available on launch day. That is our thing. You get that with the Xbox, and it will be Xbox exclusive for at least a year or something like
And I
that.
think
Then yes.
I think one of the things that's so frustrating too is we've been hearing about for like 2 or 3 years now about how Microsoft has been buying all of these developers. And, I think it was like 2 years ago, they were like, we have purchased 12 developers. And I mean, they were like big developers too. And we just haven't really heard anything from these studios. And like the only things that we have heard of, which again, I get, like it takes time to make these games. They're not just going to make them overnight. But we have heard a couple of things, but they've just been like, like battle royale games, or like Counter-Strike clones, or there's that one game that I can't remember what it's called. It's out on Game Pass right now. It looks fun. It's like a little survival crafting game where you're like a little miniature creature, or you're a miniature person, I guess, and there's like giant ants and things around you. It looks like Honey, I Shrunk the Kid, basically.
Okay.
Like, it looks like a cute, fun little game, but it's not like God of War. It's not Bloodborne. It's not Horizon Zero Dawn. Like, where are these massive AAA games that they need?
And yeah, and I think Sony did such a good job over the last generation, really, to have almost like every year one exclusive game added as a new franchise where people are excited about to see more. Like, we want to see, like, and not every game will be for everyone, but you have Bloodborne, you have Horizon Zero Dawn, you have The Last of Us, of course, now. Then you have God of War, then you have Spider-Man. And like, it just goes on, and it's
just game
also
after
then the
game from them. Yeah.
variety. And every single year, almost, you have a new PS4 exclusive game that is good.
Yeah.
That is not just out there, but that is actually good, a good game. And so no matter what type of gamer you are, you can find, you get like, in the end, like a selection of at least 2-3 PS4 exclusive games that you said, like, yeah, those were one of my favorite games of that generation, and I look forward to a sequel, whether it's on PS4 or then on the PS5. And I think now Sony is reaping the benefits of that by being like, yeah, by the way, there are the sequels that you were asking for and that you were looking for, and there will be more to come, because we know there will be another God of War game, even without them announcing it. But we know that if I buy the PS5, chances are very, very high in a couple of years or so, I will get the new God of War game.
Yeah, there's a lot of rumors going around that a new Fable game could be announced. I think that could be a great announcement and a great IP for them to bring back. A lot of people really, really loved Fable. I tried playing one of the Fable games, could never get into them, but I definitely would be interested in that if they came out with a new Fable game.
That would definitely be something, especially if they have that as a launcher, because I think at this point they also have to think about how can we kind of outplay Sony a little bit. And if they would be able to do that, that would be big, but it would kind of come out of nowhere, like very short turnaround from announcement to release, which would be great, as we always talk about. If they announce Fable this Sunday and then a couple of months later the console comes out, fantastic. But I agree, that would be something if they would announce and actually gives us also something to look at, and not just be like, oh, there's a new Fable coming out,
Yeah,
which would get hype, but I think that wouldn't be enough. But if they can show us some gameplay footage and a trailer, and like I said, I think if they have one signature game that takes like 50 minutes of this presentation where they actually show us a lot and that gets people hyped, I think then that will be successful. But we've got to see what that is and if that will come.
lots of people also talking about Elden Ring, but I don't think that they're going to show Elden Ring because it's not a first-party game, unless, I guess that's kind of my other question, is they were saying that they were only going to show first-party stuff here, but I wonder if after like all of these announcements we've been getting, I wonder if they're going to try and make this a little bit bigger and actually show third-party games as well, because again, I just was not super impressed with that that presentation that they had back in May, and I feel like this has just been such a weird year with this E3 not E3 situation. There's so many games that we were expecting to see that we haven't seen. Elden Ring is definitely one of them. I think everyone was expecting to see Elden Ring. And that was originally shown last year at the Xbox press conference. So I could see maybe them doing that. Maybe they pull in some other, big third-party developers to show off some games. Like even if it's multi-platform, just have something big to show us.
Yeah, and maybe they would be able to do something like they did with Rise of the Tomb Raider, where like a big game that will come out on all other platforms but will be exclusive to the Xbox for a year or so.
Yeah.
Maybe that will be like one of the bigger titles that we could imagine will be multi-platform, but then will turn out to be like a year-long,
or not
exclusive.
even exclusives, but I mean they have such a great setup, and I don't think that they really even need to talk about launch titles, because their strategy, like, they don't care if you buy it on the Series X or if you get it on the Xbox One X or the PC. Like, they just want to sell you games, and they want to sell you services too, with Game Pass. So like, show me a ton of stuff about Game Pass. Show me games that are coming out on Game Pass. I would be fine with that. I think Microsoft is in a great place depending on how they handle this, because they are competing with Sony, but they're also not competing with Sony, because I just don't think that they can compete with Sony on terms of IPs right now. Maybe someday they can, but Sony just has the IPs. They have the big AAA budget titles,
But
and Microsoft. But that's okay. I mean, Microsoft has amazing things. Like, Game Pass is amazing. It's insane how good that deal is. It's crazy that they're, just going to not really push their titles like on the Series X, that you can just, buy them anywhere. You can get Halo Infinite. They don't care if you have a Series X. You can get it on your Xbox One, get it on PC. They don't care. They just want to sell you that game. So like, show us these games. Just show us something, Microsoft.
Do you think something like a new Game Pass tier of some sort where you get like an exclusive deal for new releases, but like also have like kind of as a subscription based kind of thing where you probably will pay extra? Would that be an announcement that would
I
be
mean, that's
exciting
basically
for
what it
people?
is, though. Like, you get all of the first party games the day they come out if you have Game Pass. And I think they just like need to nail that into everybody, because I don't think enough people realize just how crazy good of a value Game Pass is. And it's not just
But is
first
it
party.
also if too many people use it, it isn't really like if nobody buys the games for the full price anymore for Microsoft, is that actually then impacting their value for that they give out through Game Pass?
Well, I don't know. That's really interesting, because for first party games, like I have zero reason to buy first party games because they're just always on Game Pass. Now, third party games, it seems like they usually have a 1 year deal with those. So there have been a couple of games that have come out on Game Pass, and like I've checked those out, and then I'm like, oh, I really like that game, and I bought a couple in Steam sales or something like that. But I don't know. It's interesting just how different Microsoft's strategies are compared to Sony's. And again, I think that's okay. Like, I think it's a good thing that they are so different, because they both have their strengths and their weaknesses. I feel like Microsoft has a lot of strengths that they're just holding back, and I just really want them to go all out.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll see. We've got just a little over a week. Wait, a week? 2 weeks? 23rd? Almost 2 weeks. So, yeah, we'll see what's going on with that. Lots of demos available that week also, like I mentioned. There was, just real quickly, I want to mention I don't know how to say this, Nacon Connect, they called it, which was a small publisher, a small French publisher, but they showed off a few games. Just real quickly, I'll just run through the games that they showed off. They showed off World Rally Car Racing 9. Very standard game, but it looks cool if you like those games. Tennis World Tour 2, Rogue Book, Test Drive Unlimited. So I don't know if you ever played the Test Drive games, or if you know anything about them, but they had 2 games before, and I played a lot of the second Test Drive. It's a really cool, kind of like a simulation racing game, but it's a little bit more arcadey. But the big thing with these games are you play as like a rich person basically, and like you have they have an entire island usually that is like a 1-to-1 scale of an island, and you usually have like your own house, and you can like start collecting cars, and you can go crazy on customization. Like, you can even customize your house and rooms and everything like that. But then you can really get into the customization of your cars, and you can you can go out on all the races and everything. But I think a lot of the appeal of this is it's almost like a Sims game or something like that with racing elements in it. So they showed off a new Test Drive game coming, I think they said in 2021, probably delayed to 2022. I'm not counting on any dates that these guys are putting out. The other really interesting game that they showed off was, and this is very confusing to me, maybe you know more about this because you played Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, and I know you're excited for the sequel, but there's also another game that is Vampire the Masquerade Swan Song. Have you heard about this?
I've heard about it, but I'm not too familiar about any specifics.
So I know that there was there's a lot of games in this universe, and there's a lot of games. I'll play a little bit of this trailer here. there's a lot of games that are more like point and click adventure games, but this looks like a full on. I mean, it looks like they're using the same engine as Masquerade Bloodlines 2, and so I was kind of confused about this. I saw this and I was like, "Wait, is this Bloodlines 2?" But no, this is a whole different game that's just coming out next year.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was just very surprised. I was like, okay, I'm down.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'm interested. Gotta hear and see more. But
I thought that they had some gameplay in this. Hang on, let me see if there's a gameplay trailer, because it looked just like Bloodlines 2, and that's what was super confusing to me. And I think last I've heard, we're still getting Bloodlines 2 this year.
I hope.
Let's see.
I'm not counting on anything, so.
Well, I can't find it right now. But anyway, yeah, they announced that game. Looks really good. I'm excited for it. Interested to find out more. And let's see if we had anything else in the news. Do you have anything else you wanted to talk about?
Talking about the World of Darkness and Vampire the Masquerade, there was a werewolf game announced. Let me see.
Oh, I think that was also in this direct.
Werewolf the Apocalypse, Earthblood. If you want the,
I've got it right here. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Otherwise, I would have sent it to you. But yeah, another one. Looks a little bit janky. Not gonna lie, but at the same time, not many werewolf games out there. So, for those who are not fans of vampires, maybe werewolves are more of your taste.
Are werewolves going to be the new thing, because that's what Resident Evil 8 has?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe we're entering the age of werewolf.
Is this like the bow? You remember, like, back in, I don't know, like 2012, 2013, 2014, like every game had a bow and arrow.
Oh yeah. Probably, yeah. Maybe now every game will have a werewolf. But I mean, yeah, it looks at least like could be fun action.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe that's something that's good.
Hey, they actually have a date, February 4th, 2021.
Yeah, can you believe it?
What do you think the chances are of that getting delayed?
I mean, as with every game, the chances are high. But in all fairness, it is at least, I would say, like a reasonable time until then.
Yeah.
It's not. So not like, given the fact that they announced it now, knowing that all the pandemic happened, I think we can trust that release date a little bit more. Since
I don't trust any dates.
I didn't say I trust it. I trust it more than maybe. But yeah, let's say maybe next year.
Yeah. All right, let's see what else we got. There's a big rumor going around. This is just like huge rumors, but there's a big rumor going around that Breath of the Wild 2's cast said that they finished recording their voice work, and so now everybody's speculating that this game's going to come out soon. But first of all, the first game only had like 5 lines of dialogue, so I don't think that really means there's going to be a whole lot, or that there's a whole lot to that.
Here's a question for you. Would you prefer a fully voiced Legend of Zelda to like either like the semi-voiced or like just cutscene voiced Legend of Zelda?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and I think that's we could probably have a huge discussion about that, about Nintendo games, because, you know, a lot of Nintendo games are not voice acted, and I think nowadays, I think I would. You know, when you look back at old games, like, voice acting was just so bad back in like the early 2000s. Playing through Resident Evil Code Veronica, like, the voice acting is just laughably bad. And I mean, there is like a certain appeal to that it's like just fun and silly. But voice acting has just come such a long way since then that I think a lot of people would argue that Nintendo games hold up so well because they don't have voice acting. Because you kind of do the voices in your head and you kind of have an idea of what Zelda sounds like and what Mario sounds like and that kind of stuff. But nowadays, I think I would like voice acting.
I think the Volkan plan, and Famal bringing up a good point there, I think it would be hard to now give those characters that we already know a voice, because that will, without a question, cause a lot of backlash, no matter what voice actors you choose.
Absolutely.
No matter how good the voice is.
Because I mean,
people have a different take on how
right.
Link would sound, or Zelda would sound, or Ganondorf would sound, and so, but at the same time, Nintendo is so reliant on their ongoing franchises. So where, like, who would voice Mario? Like Gilbert Gottfried? Is that...
I think the thing for me is, like, if they're gonna do it, just do it. Like, go all in on it. It kind of annoyed me with Breath of the Wild because everybody was making such a big deal about, oh, this is the first Zelda game with voice acting. And this was also my first Zelda game. This was like one of my first Nintendo games because I got into the console so late. And so I was like, oh, I am down for this. Everything's going to be voice acted. I don't have to read anything. And there's like, again, like 5 lines that are actually voice acted. And, they did give Zelda a voice. Zelda does have a voice now. And I mean, I thought it was fine, but I also, I hadn't played any of the old ones, so maybe that's kind of weird for people that have played the old ones. Vermont says that she was disappointed in Zelda's voice.
Maybe it's just kind of like ripping off the Band-Aid thing, where as Nintendo, you at some point you got to be okay. We are voice acting this now, and we know people will bitch about it, and they probably will all hate this game. But we. Not doing it for the next Zelda game, but then for the next 10 to come, basically.
Yeah. I guess that's why I'm saying, like, I hope that at some point they do, but they've just got to go all in and just do it. Like, I don't want just a few voices. Like, I want Witcher level, Witcher 3 levels of voice acting.
I guess another issue, though, is that if you look at the longevity of, for example, the Zelda franchise or Super Mario, we're started in the 90s, let's say. Like at some point, as morbid as it sounds, but your voice actors will die out and you have to recast. And not just that, but also retire or are not available, or you can't or want too much money. And I think then you get into the issue where you then have those iconic characters, but every time they have a different voice. And also, do you get all the big voice actors for then gigs where you have, because obviously Nintendo does it a lot, where they have cameos in other games like Smash Brothers or Mario Kart, or it's like some kind of collaboration. So do you get, I don't know, then a Troy Baker to voice Princess Zelda in Smash Brothers, and as well as in a full Legend of Zelda game? Like, do you want to pay that money, or do you then take another voice actor who sounds similar, but then it's a slightly different voice? And it opens up a new can of worms. And I think maybe they're just like, oh, we never did it. Let's just stay out of that.
Well, that's the thing. Nintendo is very set in their ways. And I will say, like, to their credit, I think that does help the old games hold up well, because I can guarantee, like, playing through Majora's Mask, if that game was voice acted, like, it would probably be terrible. Because, like I was saying, that voice acting back then was just not where it was at today. And even today, like, there are still some bad voice acting, but it has come a long way. And yeah, that's a good point too. Like, with these franchises are so old, and who knows how long Zelda is gonna keep being remade. at some point they're going to have to recast people for Zelda and Mario and that kind of stuff. So I'm okay with how it is now, but if I'm being honest, like I would love a fully voice acted Legend of Zelda, or I mean, I don't know, maybe not Mario. That would feel kind of weird, but there's not really like a lot of story, I guess, in Mario.
It's me, Mario.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question.
Members Idea brings up a good point that a lot of the Nintendo games are also, or at least are also directed at younger players who cannot yet read,
Yeah.
which would, like with voice acting, you would have more accessibility for those younger players and less work for the parents.
Also, Nintendo, I mean, you can't go back and change this, but playing through Ocarina of Time, I swear the text would come up, and this is just a problem in a lot of games sometimes. When the text comes up so fast and like they don't give you the option to click to the next page or whatever, it just like disappears, and I always miss so much stuff because I guess I just read really slow, or like especially when I'm streaming and I'm like reading it out loud. So many times I can't read through everything before it goes to the next voice or the next page or whatever.
Oh yeah, I have that issue all the time with games in general, especially like in cutscenes when there is a text and then you read it out loud, and you may start like 2 seconds too late, and then it's like, oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Ubisoft is going to be giving out Watch Dogs 2 for free if you watch the Ubi Forward. So that's a pretty good deal. All right, let's see. Let's go ahead and move on. Let's do a couple of questions. I've got a few questions from Vermont, and then we'll maybe pick a couple of games for our games of the generation to talk about, and then I think we will wrap it up.
Yeah.
Let's see. Vermont asks, if you could only play one game for the rest of your life, which one would it be and why?
Okay. I think like it's Out of the Park baseball.
That's what I was gonna ask.
Like,
if that was
it's so sandboxy that it's always different. Like that's the appeal of the game. It's kind of, like I was thinking. I mean, obviously, games like I love The Witcher 3, but at some point, you know everything about
right.
it. I don't want to get to the point where I don't like The Witcher anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas games like XCOM or like even Dark Souls, they have a high replay rate. But even with Dark Souls, I think if I would only play Dark Souls, I would get tired of it very fast.
Yeah.
Well. So I think it would have to be something like XCOM, something like a simulation like Out of the Park Baseball, or like some kind of real time strategy thing where really every play through or every time you play is a little bit different and also takes up a lot of hours. So I get to the point where I finally die quicker.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Like picking a game to play for the rest of your life, you're probably not going to pick your favorite game because, like you say, you don't want to play through The Witcher 3 so many times that you just get tired of it. I think depending on if I could use mods, like I might go with Dark Souls because there are some really interesting mods for Dark Souls. And like there's some randomizer mods and things like that. But I think it for me it has to be XCOM 2. XCOM 2 with like all the DLC and everything. I don't think I could ever get tired of that. I mean, I would probably get tired, but like I could, stop for a month or two and then pick it back up, and just the way that game is done in that.
Could you stop for a month or two, because that would also mean that you can't play any game for a month or two.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be the thing. Like, we can only have this is like a desert island, right?
Are there any other hobbies out there? I don't think so.
I think my scenario is you're on a desert island. You somehow have an ultimate gaming computer.
Sounds great.
But you can only play one game. You don't have any internet access. You only had, a small enough hard drive to fit one game.
Because then you don't even have anything else to keep you occupied for those 1 or 2 months that you want to stop
Well, I could go on like a hike or something.
I mean, okay.
I'm thinking like Lost levels of Desert Island. Like I don't know if you ever watched Lost, but like, you know, a giant like tropical forest setting or something like that.
Like Survivor.
Yeah, like Survivor. But you would be the survivor. You would be the sole survivor. Yeah, you could learn a hobby, like you could paint or like draw in the sand or something.
But am I an artist? No, I like money.
Let's be honest. If we were stuck on a desert island, first of all, we'd probably die within a week.
I mean, if it's just a week, then I can play The Witcher. That's fine.
But if somehow like we manage to survive past then, like we're probably not going to have a whole lot of time for gaming.
I mean, you say that now, but there are also plenty of things I should do, and I still play video games. So I would certainly find a way to reason why I don't need fire.
Oh, I really should be hunting right now, but XCOM.
But there's this quest.
Yeah, I think it would still be XCOM for me, and Baseball Manager for you.
Yeah.
What are people saying in the chat? We got Minesweeper, Mass Effect. Yeah, I mean, see, Mass Effect would be good, but like you still would get to a point to where like you've played every character, you've, you know, romanced every character, you played every class. One question that I heard on a podcast that I think I thought was a really interesting question. If you locked somebody in a room that had never played a video game in their life, like, you know, I mean, like my mom has never played a video game in her life. I don't know if she would even know how to use a controller. If you locked my dear mom in a room and gave her a controller and told her that she had to beat the end boss of Sekiro, how long would that take? Do you think that they could even do it? I mean, I think that they could do it. Like, they would eventually figure out how to do it.
But I mean, okay, if we assume that we kind of force them to play, so they can't opt out of it, they have to play, and
they cannot come out of the room until they beat the boss.
It's some kind of twisted Saw situation where if they are not playing the game, like their head explodes or something.
Well, I mean, so, they can sleep, they can rest, they can eat.
Yeah, obviously, like they have to play the game for like 8 hours a day at least or something.
Yeah,
like 10 hours a day. How long would it take? I mean, probably like. I don't think it would take that long, like, because like if you just focus on that, we as humans are pretty adaptable, so it would be like a very steep learning curve, obviously. So I would say it would probably take a week or so to get the basics like done, like a week of every day, like 8 to 10 hours of playing, and then like you get kind of onto the level of as like most normal gamers would be, because obviously they only have this island skill of just being learning controls for Sekiro, so they would be probably comparable to like us playing or starting Sekiro, maybe like another week. So I would say like a couple of weeks.
I could see it going a while. I mean, you're talking about somebody that has never, like, doesn't even know how to use a controller.
Yeah, but like that, you figure that out. Like if you have to spend 8 hours a day doing that, you figure that out. I think most of the time people struggle with new things because they then lose interest in it and are not really focused on learning it, or don't want to.
If you were forced to do it, yeah,
you would learn it way faster.
You say 2 weeks. Vermont says 3 weeks. I would say, I mean, there's obviously no way to know. I mean, do we have anybody that we can lock in a room?
You offered up your mother, so Do it for the podcast. You want it to be big, so.
Plan says it would take his mom over 2 years for sure. Do you really think it would take her 2 years, though? Like, I don't think it would take 2 years.
I want to give a shout out here to someone who doesn't know me, but I've some time ago I watched a video, or like it turned into a video series of a YouTube channel called Razbuten, Razbuten, and it's basically a video essay about gaming for non-gamers, where he takes his girlfriend or wife that he calls the woman he lives with, and she's not into gaming at all, and he introduces her to a variety of games and kind of examines how she reacts to certain different games and which one were easier to get into for her. And like there are a couple of videos where they then observe a few different aspects. I posted one of the video in the server, but so it's very interesting to watch. I can highly recommend it because they bring up some interesting points that we as people who kind of grew up playing video games don't even think about, like things that are just second nature for us, that are obviously not second nature for someone who hasn't played video games. It can be like simple things like every red canister means explosives. We know that. Someone who never known, for them it's just another item in the world. It's a red item in the world. So and there were a bunch of those, so I can highly recommend checking that out, because it was an interesting perspective from someone watching someone who has no experience with games, but then gets into them. And I think in the first video he kind of throws her into the deep end, like lets her play like Doom, the newest Doom, and like League of Legends, and like Dark Souls and some of that. But then also in another one they explore more casual games, and it's interesting to watch. A nice video essay series.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing. Like how I think a good question would be like, what's the best game to introduce somebody to a video game that like has never played video games before?
Yeah, that is what they talk about as well. And I think like it really probably is a game that is where the mechanics are pretty self-explanatory. So where you can relate with it. So probably something like Minecraft. I think a lot of Nintendo games do a good job of teaching you basics because they are aimed at children that also have little experience. Sandboxy games, generally speaking, probably as well. Something like Animal Crossing, probably also
that would be a good
another
one.
one.
Portal would be a good one.
Yeah, like things to really get the basics out, but are in a way that are not too abstract in concept. But at the same time, I also think it is very important that the person who is trying a game also has at least a small interest in what the game is about. Because again, if you don't have interest in something, it is much harder to learn something. So if there is a certain interest for the type of Animal Crossing game, then that is probably better than, for example, Minecraft, or vice versa, if that person is more interested in crafting and building. So I think it's something like that.
Basically, Dad in chat says it took his wife like 2 weeks to figure out how to use the right stick to move the camera. It's a real skill she had to learn.
Yeah, that is something they talk about in the video as well. That just something that for us is normal, like moving the camera, that you can move the camera. That is not automatically self-explanatory for someone who hasn't played games at all.
Yeah. Dragon Quest Builders, that would be a good one. Find a game, Vermont says, find a game that has a story that they like, something that makes them want to learn it. That's a good one. Reality says Skyrim got his wife into games, and I heard of other people getting into games with it.
Interesting.
Danielle says, I hate having to move the camera, partly because I get horrible motion sickness. Okay. Partly because it's too much for me to focus on. I dipped out of consoles after PS3. and things evolved after that. I got old. Yeah, that's interesting because a lot of Nintendo games, like I was playing Ocarina of Time, and like there wasn't really a camera to move. I mean, you could move it, but it was very obscure. But I also feel like a lot of people that played that game back then probably may have been a little bit confusing to actually have a camera, have a right stick to move the camera. Like when that was first introduced, it's just that I grew up, learning how to move a right stick, but going back and seeing how games were played, even though they were more simplistic, it's like it's harder for me to learn that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion. Let's see. Vermont also asks, do you guys remember the first game you ever played?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure which one that would.
Yeah, this is tough because I don't know, like...
Yeah. Because I think it was the Super Nintendo of my step siblings that I played first the video game on. And then it's one of the ones that they had, which was either, I think, Super Mario Land 3 or Super Mario 3 or whatever the title is. It's either that, Kirby's Dream Land, and probably one of the two. Yeah.
I think the first console game that I played was probably the original Super Mario Bros, or whatever they call it. Because I do remember, I never had the console, but I do remember someone letting us borrow that console and me trying to play Super Mario, and I couldn't play it. Like, it was too complicated. I was only like 5 years old. But like the first... and I mean, this kind of goes into the next question that Vermont asks as well. Do you remember the first game you remember finishing? I don't know if I do remember the first game that I finished.
I'm pretty sure for me it was Pokemon Blue.
Okay. I played a lot of games back in the day that I never finished. And also, I mean, I played a lot of just like random PC games that were like Solitaire, like Minesweeper and that kind of stuff, that never really had an ending.
The pinball.
Yeah. Man, what would be the first game that I ever finished? Probably, this is a really weird one, but Rainbow Six, like the original Rainbow Six.
Okay.
I'm just trying to think timeline-wise, because I played that like back in the late 90s, and that was one of the first games that I remember like actually playing that got me into really playing video games, not just like playing simple Minesweeper and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for me it must be a game probably on it must be on the Game Boy, and I think it must be Pokemon Blue for me. As far as you can finish it. I never collected them all, but like beating the final four.
Right. Minish says, I actually can't play 3D games with a mouse and keyboard. Using mouse to move the camera is impossible. I bet you could, though, Minish. Like, this would be going back to our old thing. Like, if you were locked in a room, and let's say you had to beat the end boss of Sekiro with a mouse and keyboard, like, you could do it, right? It would just take a long time. It's a very
effective weapon, though.
Right.
You really get... I don't know.
You gotta make sure you get a mouse with a cord. You don't want a wireless mouse. That way you can like swing it around. And first game for Plan was Battle Chess on the 486. Super Mario 64 was the first game Vermont played on her own, or SimCity, one of those. Danielle, earliest I can remember Paperboy on MS-DOS. Minish says Super Mario Bros. On the NES. Vermont says borrowing consoles was such a big thing back in the day. Now it seems like no one does it. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true.
I definitely remember like even like Blockbuster back when that was the thing. You could rent consoles.
No, I'm not sure if that was a thing here in Germany. It might be, but I might have been too young to realize.
Yeah.
But don't remember that being big. I mean, I'm sure it existed to some degree, but don't know if that was a big thing that people would do here.
First game Vermont finished was Ocarina of Time. Plan finished Link's Awakening first game. Okay. Interesting. Good questions. Let's move on. Let's talk about our games of the generation. So this is week 2 of our games of the generation talk. We're going through trying to create a comprehensive list of all of the games that stood out from this past generation. Last week we talked about Dark Souls 3, The Witcher 3, Watch Dogs 1, Fortnite, and Rocket League. Akko, you have any ones that you want to throw in the list?
Yeah, I'm currently looking at the ones first posted in my Discord. Renee's talked about Persona 5, a game that you enjoy, right? You played it. Yeah, you played through it.
I did, yeah.
I enjoyed. We talked about it. I enjoyed a bunch of it, but never got past the tutorial of the 20 hours. But Renee says
you were halfway through the tutorial, Akko.
Yeah. Quickly, what he said and why he added it to the list. I know he's a big fan of Persona 5. A wonderful cast of characters and a story that walks the line between serious and dark and light and fun really well. The combat is probably the best turn-based combat has ever been and proves, in my opinion, that it's not a battle system that is at all outdated. The most stylish UI in the history of video games, a masterclass on how to integrate UI into the overall style of your game. Also, one of the all-time greatest video game soundtracks, where I defy anyone to not find at least one track that has them bopping their head along with the whole time. So that is his condensed version of it. But yeah, from the little I played, I obviously didn't finish it, but I talked about it before. It's one of those games where I can totally see why people love it so much, because I could see all the great aspects. The soundtrack was great. It was a very stylish game, and I really enjoyed most of the game that I played. So I can definitely see that, and I think it is on the list for so many people of one of their favorite games all time, and at the very least of the generation, and for that certainly deserves a place on our mentioned list.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's a great mention, and I would imagine it's probably a lot of people's first Persona game. It was definitely my first Persona game, and what kind of got me into the series. And it's a really unique series. There's really nothing else like it. It was. Wait a second. Was it? I think it was the first. It was the first turn-based JRPG that I ever played, and it kind of spoiled me a little bit because the turn-based combat in that game is just so good, and I thought that like every turn-based combat was going to be like this now, and so I played Final Fantasy X after this, and I loved Final Fantasy X, but I was a little disappointed with the combat. Even though I think it's still really, really good, it's just not as good as Persona 5's combat. But again, that's just because, I played Persona 5 and was just expecting every game to be like that. I was like, oh, this is what turn-based combat is? I'm down. It's definitely a really great game. It's a very long game. It's a very fantastic value for what you pay for it. And it's even gotten me interested in going back into the old Persona games. And Persona 4 now is out on PC, so that's really cool. Lots of rumors about them maybe porting some of the older games as well. I think that would be really cool. But yeah, good mention. Yep. Let's see. I will throw out a heavy hitter here that a lot of people have brought up. A small little game called Zelda Breath of the Wild. Don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah.
So
I heard that is great voice acting.
5 out of 5. So Decelis in our Discord said Breath of the Wild kind of does the talking for itself, despite some faults with the story, weapon durability. The experience it gives is just so good. The visuals, music, gameplay, exploration are all top notch. I absolutely love the go anywhere and beat the game in any order approach. Yeah, I mean, Breath of the Wild is absolutely a game of the generation. I think it was probably like Persona, probably a lot of people's first Zelda games. It was my first Zelda game. But just the simplicity of it, but also just the open world nature to it, that you literally can go anywhere, everywhere you want to go in that game, do anything you want to do. The climbing mechanics are just, you kind of like have to ask yourself, why in the world did nobody think of this before they came up with that? And it's so interesting to me that like games can still innovate to this day, and still come up with new things and still make things more interesting. So I think that's a really great mention.
Yeah, and I think not Breath of the Wild certainly took the open world and open world games to a new or at least different level, and also reinvented, or not maybe reinvented, but progressed the evolution of the Legend of Zelda games itself within the series to a next step, brought it to a next level, or to a next step. And obviously, not everything might be of the liking to everyone, but I think it is undeniable that they did not just rest on their laurels, but actually try to advance the series, try to advance the franchise, and also push boundaries of what we define as an open world game in general. And I think that is very, very commendable.
Absolutely. Do we want to go with any more? Or do we want to just go with two?
I think two for today is pretty good, and probably also good to mention that if anyone else can think of some more games of the generation, just let us know in the Discord, especially if you have a lengthy reason as to why you chose that game. Let us know both on Health Discord, on my Discord as well, and we will read your definition as to why you wanted on that list. And we appreciate you sharing that with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like people writing why and not just writing, hey, Witcher 3 is a great game, but like, why is it a great game? Why is it a game of the generation? What's made it a game of the generation? So yeah, I think it's kind of fun to do like 2 a week, and we could probably just kind of stretch this out up until the new consoles come out. So
yeah, that sounds good. Probably also a quick mention that we initially defined as this generation every game released after 2013. So not just console games, but games in general after 2013.
Or even there were the consoles launched in 2013. So I mean, if it came out like at the end of that year, then that's fine.
Yeah.
All right. I think that is going to do it for us today, Akko. You got anything else you want to throw out?
No, other than remind everyone to like, share, and subscribe. The new podcast feeds all over the world. Give us 5 out of 5, 6 out of 6, whatever the rating is. Give us the best one, because Hal deserves it, and I want to leech off that as well. So do that. It helps a lot. It satisfies the evil algorithms of the internet, and keeps us growing, and keeps giving us more content if more people join in with suggestions, ideas, questions, and probably also lots of criticism.
Absolutely. Yeah, please go and do check that out. I'm really excited that we got that worked out. And if you want to watch this live, if you're listening to this and you want to watch this live, we do this every Friday at 2 p.m. Central Time. We stream it on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Hal451. But Akko, you also stream. What do you got coming up?
Occasionally. I mostly stream right now Assassin's Creed Odyssey, that we're currently at the DLCs. We finished the main game there, and also Mass Effect Andromeda. I plan on getting into Mafia 3 probably soon-ish after that, and usually just doing some fun games here and there in between as well.
Very, very cool. Yeah, I will be covering. I'm pretty sure I'm going to try and cover the Ubisoft press conference on Sunday. Might stream the Devolver press conference tomorrow, but we'll definitely be talking about that next week as well on the podcast. And I just finished Code Veronica, so I'll be starting a new game next Tuesday. And I'm not sure what I'm going to play yet. I've got a couple of ideas, but I'm just going to leave it as a surprise. So you'll just have to show up to find out.
Whoa.
But that is going to do it for us today, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you all for your support. We will see you guys next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye.